Howdy, y'all. It is another I Am That chapter. Chapter 69. Transcendency is proof of unreality. Transcendency is proof of unreality. Quite, interesting, weird chapter name. But really trying to get to the point, I think, of all these chapters. It's just really a repackaging, a reframing of this sense of, I am, and that you are this transcendent, you are the witness, the source, whatever you want to call it, right? And so that's what that this is trying to say is when you can transcend, you know, something, that means it's not really reality in the first place because the ultimate real, the sublime, the most real of the real is what we transcend to, right? So but although what's interesting, for example, the questioner would say, surely there are degrees of realization, which, especially even from my Western mind, kind of makes sense. And there's something about that. I always that's for the longest time, probably until fairly recently, kind of digging into these sort of Hindu Buddhist type of traditions. I've kind of always thought of spirituality as like levels to be achieved, just like life. I mean, so much of life, that's why we always feel like it's like things are a spectrum, and things are a spectrum. There's degrees of certain things, blah blah blah. So understandably off the bat, this idea that self-realization would be in stages is something understandable. I even still, like I say, find myself kind of thinking like that in many situations. I have to try to stop myself. But here's Maharaj responds to that by saying, there are no steps to self-realization. There is nothing gradual about it. It happens suddenly and is irreversible. You rotate into a new dimension, seen from which the previous ones are mere abstractions. Just like on sunrise, you see things as they are, so on self-realization, you see everything as it is. The world of illusions is left behind. And then the questioner responds with another question. In the state of realization, do things change? They become colorful and full of meaning? Maharaj, the experience is quite right, but it is not the experience of reality, but of harmony of universe. Well, a question. Nevertheless, there is progress. He was trying to do a fast one, like, oh, there's some sort of progress thing. But here this is a really good response, and I really really like this. Is one of my favorite responses I think I've heard of, because for me it kind of reconciles this idea that self realization itself is can be a very sudden thing. There are still things that lead up to that makes it feel so it doesn't feel like it's a sudden thing. The act itself is, but the preparation is not. So this is how he responds to this. Maharaj, there can be progress only in the preparation. Sadhana, realization is sudden. The fruits ripen slowly, but fails suddenly and but falls suddenly and without return. Questioner, I am physically and mentally at peace. What more do I need? Maharaj, yours may not be the ultimate state. You will recognize that you have returned to your natural state by a complete absence of all desire and fear. After all, at the root of all desire and fear is feeling of not being what you are. Just as a dislocated joint pains only as long as it is out of shape and is forgotten as soon as it is set right, so is all self-concern a symptom of mental distortion, which disappears as soon as one is in the normal state. I do like that analogy. Once again, he's like a master of analogies. Um, really much so, very very much so. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. I feel like it's a really good way of, and because my own analogy, my own metaphor for this is like the hammer and the nail, and like each of these metaphors, just nailing it just that little bit more. And that's like the preparation for that moment of self realization. And so the questioner, Yes, but what is the sadhana for achieving the natural state? And then this is when he kind of goes into his whole spiel of the holding on to of the I am. This is when he does, like, I always call it the I am sales pitch that he does. And most of these chapters, at some point, he will go into spiel about you got to hold on to the sense of I am, which is true. I'm not like making fun of it. I'm just saying that's like a thing. It's like a very common part of each of these chapters. I mean, but it makes sense given you know the name of the book, right? Like it makes sense. But anyways, um, the questioner after this it says, if you could tell me what I shall become, it may help me watch over my development. Maharaj, how can anybody tell you what you shall become when there's no becoming? You merely discover what you are. All molding oneself to a pattern is a grievous waste of time. Think neither of the past nor of the future. Just be. Questioner, how can I just be? Changes are inevitable. Maharaj, changes are inevitable in the changeful, but you are not subject to them. You are the changeless background against which changes are perceived. Questioner, everything changes. The background also changes. There is no need of a changeless background to notice changes. The self is momentary. It is merely the point where the past meets the future. And then Maharaj, he goes then on his what I also call the memory spiel, when he uses dreams and all this as pointing out to show that that's all based on memory, essentially. That what he's talking about, being this being that changes and do things and blah blah blah, like our lives are just memories playing out. Of course, let me just read some of it. Of course, the self based on memory is momentary, but such self demands unbroken continuity behind it. You know from experience that there are gaps when your self is forgotten. What brings it back to life? What wakes you up in the morning? There must be some constant factor bridging the gaps in consciousness. If you watch carefully, you will find that even your daily consciousness is in flashes with gaps intervening all the time. So pretty much, like I do like that because I do think it's a good argument to show for him to show like, hey, you're thinking yourself too limited in too much of a limited way. That's the kind of that's like the beauty of so much of these teachings is that it's telling us like, hey, there's way more to this whole life's business. We're just scratching the surface, you know. We're just scratching the surface of even just what you are. You're more than just some organism that, evolved, from billions of years of evolution and all this, which is extraordinary and cool. Like just on the physical understanding of what you are, it is cool. Like I don't want, reject that, reject science, reject the physical world in this sense. It's cool and it's interesting, but this just it's that many more layers. You know what I mean? Doesn't matter if you're rich, poor, all these things. That there's this fundamental I am in which you are. And then I want to end with a very excellent point or question that the questioner has. He asks if is there any difference between the experience of the self, Atman, and of the absolute, Brahman. Maharaj, there can be no experience of the absolute that is beyond all experience. On the other hand, the self is the experiencing factor in every experience and thus, in a way, validates the multiplicity of experiences. The world may be full of things of great value, but if there is nobody to buy them, they have no price. The absolute contains everything experienceable, but without the experiencer, they are as nothing. That which makes the experience possible is the absolute. That which makes it actual is the self. The questioner, don't we reach the absolute through a graduation of experiences, beginning with the grossest, we end with the most sublime? So once again, trying to argue for that the gradualness, which hey, I'm very sympathetic to this argument. Like I don't want to knock the questioner for this. And there's a lot of times where certain concepts do obviously go over his head and stuff, but I get it. I get it because like from the, especially from the beginning of, even of this book, I was very much of that mindset, and I still struggle with it. So like I said, it's hard for me to judge. Anyways, um, this is how Maharaj responds to that question. There can be no experience without desire for it. There can be no graduation between desires, but between the most sublime desire and the freedom from all desire, there is an abyss which must be crossed. The unreal may look real, but it is transcendent. The real is not afraid of time. So, which getting back to what like the meaning of this chapter of this, right? This gets back to the meaning. It's what it is. It's ultimately that we have this window of like experiences, like like as the questioner said, from the grossest to the most sublime. It, the real is not afraid of time. The real is not afraid of time. So what do you mean by that? The real is not afraid of time. It means that, of course, because what he's saying, this whole space time, these are part of the illusion itself. I think and so what is transient break, what is transient is that it is beyond the time, that is beyond change and beyond form, and even beyond experience itself, right? As he's expressed in earlier chapters. And the questioner, is not the unreal the expression of the real? Maharaj, how can it be? It is like saying that truth expresses itself in dreams. To the real, the unreal is not. It appears to be real only because you believe in it. Doubt it, and it ceases. When you're in love with somebody and give it When you are in love with somebody, you give it reality. When you imagine your love to be all powerful and everlasting. When it comes to an end, you say, I thought it was real, but it wasn't. Transcendency is the best proof of unreality. What is limited in time and space and applicable to one person only is not real. The real is for all and forever. And so yeah, there you say it. You see, he says it himself even. That was the transcendency is the best proof of unreality because it is, about breaking the space-time barrier. That's part of what the spirituality is, right? Is understanding things in a sense that's beyond the physicality. I mean, I guess I understand for those who are very atheistic, that's a little bit different. But the ideal of the self, yes, it is beyond space time. And thus why it is it is the most real. It's like as all these things kind of connect back together, right? All these ideas to connect back together. Questioner, even the unreal, there is a touch of reality. Maharaj, yes, the reality you impart to it by taking it to be real. Having convinced yourself you are bound by conviction, when the sun shines, colors appear. When it sets, they disappear. Where there are colors, without the light. Questioner, this is thinking in terms of duality. Maharaj, all thinking is in duality. In identity, no thought survives. In identity, no thought survives. And yeah, I kind of agree with them. And yeah, at the end of the day, yeah, thinking is. It can be a very dualistic thing. It's a very limited thing in of itself. You can only think of so much. You can only think of so much. But yes, it's always is or is not, one or zero, right? It's very that's what thinking is. It's based on that very much that logic, the logos. Which if logos is fine, logic has its uses, right? It's helped us survive as animals for eons. And so, yeah, I think that was the end of the chapter anyway. So I'm gonna end it on there. Tell me what you all think, and I will see you all next time. Namaste, y'all. Hare Krishna. Peace.